All right, let's take a look at the classic cosmological argument by Aquinas. This is a piece you actually read. And Aquinas' thinking begins with the observation that at any given moment, there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of movement, a lot of change. And it's not just random movement and change. There is a cause-effect relationship taking place in events, right? Something happens, and because it happens the way it does, it causes something else to happen. And because that happens the way it does, it causes something else to happen. And Aquinas wonders, how far into the future does this chain of cause and effect extend? How far into the future will events be taking place that are caused by the events that came prior? And Aquinas comes to the conclusion, well, theoretically at least, into infinity, right? As long as things exist, as long as events are existing, this chain could theoretically extend into infinity. And so then Aquinas wonders, well, I wonder if the reverse is also true. I know at any given moment when an event takes place, like people tripping and falling, that there was a sequence of events leading up to that tripping and falling that caused the tripping and falling to happen. In fact, we could trace back in our own existence every event to a prior event that leads all the way to our birth. And then Aquinas thinks, well, then we could really keep going then, right? Because then we would just go to the event, the moment before you were born and what was happening, and then the moments before that. And Aquinas wonders, does this mean that there's a sequence of events that extends into the past infinitely? We know that everything that exists right here, right now, was caused to exist by something that came before it. And that thing was caused to exist before something that came before it. And so again, Aquinas wonders, well, how far does this sequence of causes into the past extend? Does it extend forever? Have things been happening forever? Has this chain of events been occurring for infinity? And Aquinas concludes that doesn't make any sense. There had to have been something that set this chain of events into motion. Things cannot have always existed. Where would they have come from? Aquinas thinks. So they had to have some sort of a beginning, and that includes all of the events that take place. So Aquinas' first, look at that haircut. Man, that is a sweet haircut. Aquinas comes up with his first cause argument. There had to have been something that wasn't caused that threw the dice and set everything in motion and set this chain of events into motion. Okay, and Aquinas is going to make this with an argument that's based on a number of premises. And the argument is structured such that if the premises turn out to be true, or we regard them as true, we're going to have to regard the conclusion as also true in order to be logically consistent. So here's his argument. The world contains things whose existence depends on some cause. That seems true. My existence and your existence depended on a cause called our parents. Had they not been, we would not be. So we were caused to exist by our parents. Second premise says everything that exists is either uncaused or caused to exist by another thing. So this statement's a tautology. It's sort of like the statement it's either raining outside or it's not raining outside. There's no way for that statement to be false. And this is a similar kind of statement. So this statement's true. Third premise says there cannot be an infinite regression of causes. All right. Next premise says, so there must be an uncaused first cause. Well, if the second premise and the third premise are true, this would follow, right? Because if it's true that either everything that exists is either uncaused or caused to exist by another thing, and it's true there can't be an infinite regression of causes, that means there had to have been something that was uncaused that caused everything to start happening. Aquinas claims that uncaused first cause is what we mean by God. That uncaused first God is the supernatural being that has always existed and not caused. That is, by definition, what Aquinas means by God. Therefore, God has to exist. Now, I suggested to you that you rank this argument on a scale of 1 to 10 as a 5. And this becomes sort of our, not a norm, but it becomes our benchmark, right? So we can evaluate the compellingness of all of these other arguments against this one. If we think other arguments are better, more compelling, we'll give it a score higher than 5. If we think the arguments are less compelling, we'll give them a score less than 5. All right, so now we got to get a sense of like, well, what makes this a 5? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? Well, I already pointed out to you that these first two premises are true. Okay. And this this last premise right here, that is also definitionally true. Okay. So that raises a couple of questions about these premises in here, particularly that one. Okay. Is it true that there can't be an infinite regression of causes? Is it true that it's not possible that things have always existed and were never created? Is it the case that events have always been occurring and never had a starting point? Okay? And this is a question we're going to have to ask ourselves. Which seems more plausible? That there's a series of causes producing present events that can be traced back infinitely, never ending, never leading to a first cause? Or there's some series of causes that was produced that can be traced back to some first cause. There's some beginning of events, some beginning of the time when events take place. And this is a question you're going to have to grapple with. Which one of these explanations seem more plausible? Because if Aquinas is right, and everything that exists either was uncaused or caused to exist by another thing, and there can't be an infinite regression of causes, there had to have been a first cause. And that first cause would, by definition, be God. But is it really true that there can't be an infinite regression of causes? If you think that's the case and Aquinas is right, a 5 is, this argument's a pretty good argument as a 5. But if you think some way there could be an infinite regression of causes, or you think it's likely that there was and that nothing had a beginning, then maybe we scored the argument a little less than, or not scored a little less, but we regard that 5 as a little less compelling than we otherwise might.